an organization like the St. Lucia National Trust to be trying to label it when we have serious development issues which we should be dealing with on their merit, and we're not doing that. Instead, we have a whipping boy.
Yeah, but that's not for me to deal on.
Which we are utilizing as an excuse.
Are you saying?
Are you saying? It's not fair to St. Lucia.
Are you saying, Calix? Are you saying that I should be discussing the merits of Cabot?
Well, I think you should.
No.
Why shouldn't you?
No, I leave that to experts to do it. What I don't like is the perception of the group being political.
But who is creating that perception? The same a political.
No, it's there. It's there.
It's there,
and it's for the trust.
Entity is pushing that narrative.
It is there, and it is for the trust to dispel it. It's the job of the trust to dispel it.
Why
the accusation that the trust is political and that we only seem to take issue with the present government. Firstly, the trust was on the board of the DCA prior to this government, which gave us the opportunity to learn about developments before approvals and to get involved and engage in the process much earlier. But once we were removed, we no longer had that opportunity. So we were left in a position where we either hear things through the grapevine or we react after things are approved.
Director of the St. Lucia National Trust, Bishnu Tulsi, says in early 2017, the SLNT unceremoniously stopped receiving invitations to board meetings of the Development Control Authority. Tulsi says where other governments insisted developers speak with the trust on projects, this current administration has not.
During Sir John's last brief stint as Prime Minister, someone wanted to convert Dennery Island into a wedding destination. He was told to go and speak with the trust and come back with the views of the trust before we discuss this any further. In January of 2016, the trust was invited to a meeting by at that time Dr. Anthony was the Prime Minister, and the meeting was held in the Cabinet Room, at which Theo Akim made a presentation of the DSH project. Following that presentation, there was an open discussion, during which Dr. Anthony turned to Mr. Akim and told him, you must speak with the trust because you're proposing a development in sensitive areas and you need to speak with the trust before you fashion your project.
Tulsi also cited the Leparity development, certain aspects of which, he says, the trust was not in agreement with, but nevertheless, there was an open-door policy by the previous administration on dialogue.
The Leparity project was under Dr. Kenny Anthony's administration. We had serious issues with that project, but the government facilitated dialogue and discussion with the trust.
The SLNT director says because the trust has been kept in the dark on development projects under this current administration, the conservation group has been left with no choice but to remain vigilant.
The Dolphinarium is another example. We knew that the developer was coming to Pigeon Island. They come, they pay their fees, they come in as guests. They were taking their measurements, taking their photographs. The Prime Minister accompanied them on one of those visits. Without a word to the trust, we were only left to speculate what was happening until the developer made a presentation to the council and its members, and we know where that happened. The point I'm making with all of these examples is that with past administrations, there was always an open door. And there was always not just the opportunity, but the insistence that developers speak with the Heritage Conservation Organization. But that is no longer the case. And the trust is now forced to react to these situations.
The trust believes that active engagement and early consultation are the key differences in the manner in which the two political parties have gone about developing the island in the recent past.
I think I'm not even going to argue the point. I think because it's clear, there are a number. In fact, right now, I would go so far as to say most UWPs, for example, think the trust is working hand in hand with the Labour Party to
Yeah.
frustrate the government.
You can't talk about democracy and the rule of law and not act that way. In that conversation, that there can be mutual respect. I see the National Trust jumping up and down and jumping ahead of itself.
What the Prime Minister had to say was not respectful to us and was way out of line.
To do is just think about the DSH thing and all of that.
I think it is important for us not to separate conservation and development because they go hand in hand.
The only reason why we didn't do the development in the mangrove is because of the garbage dump, not because of major environmental concerns.
In developing our nation, we need to make sure we conserve the natural environment. And I got the feeling from the lecture we had that we are against development because we want to conserve the environment. And that's not true.